My name's Sue Paterson. I'm a veterinary surgeon. My day job is I'm a veterinary dermatologist, and I'm currently a member of Royal College Council, and I'm chair of the Education Committee at Royal College. And I'm delighted today that we're able to bring you an update on the Veterinary Graduate Development Programme, just to keep you up to speed with everything that's happening. We're going to go through particularly things I think that are pertinent to new graduates. So we are going to talk about things like EPAs today, just to give you a real insight as to what's involved with those as you start the programme and you move through it. I'm going to talk a little bit about EPAs later on, and we're going to answer some questions for you that have been submitted prior to this. But I'm going to hand the floor to Linda Prescott-Clements, who's Director of Education at Royal College, who's going to give us an overview of the programme. Over to you, Linda.
Thanks, Sue, and hello, everyone. So today what we're going to cover a little bit about the VetGDP Guidance that's now on our website, and then we're going to talk about who does what within the programme, so who's responsible for what and what the requirements are for hosting VetGDP. We're going to look at the different types of support that you can expect from your VetGDP advisor in practice. And then, as Sue's mentioned, we're going to talk about Entrustable Professional Activities, or EPAs, which form the framework of your e-portfolio for the programme. Then we'll look at how you complete the programme and the sign-off process for that. And we'll finish with some questions, as Sue mentioned. So to start, the VetGDP Guidance is now on our website, and the link is there, so please do go and download that. There's also the EPA bank on the website as well, and the guidance should provide all of the information you need to prepare you for the VetGDP programme when you enrol on it later this year. In terms of who is responsible for what, so the programme itself is led jointly by you, the graduate, and your VetGDP advisor. And the advisor is the person in practice or who visits practice who's agreed to be the primary person who gives support to you. There's also the responsibility on the practice or the workplace via the senior vet to allow you and the advisor protected time for these support activities. And these responsibilities for each of these roles are embedded within the new Code of Professional Conduct. So hosting VetGDP, to be able to take on new graduates, employers need to be in an RCVS approved VetGDP practice or workplace. And what that means is that they have at least one person within the practice who is a VetGDP advisor. For this year, they need to have started the e-learning, recognising that the pandemic might make it challenging to have fully completed it by the time graduates are enrolling. But in the longer term, we would expect them to have completed the e-learning, and they also need to sign a declaration to provide you with support as well. GDP advisors, we've had a really positive response from the profession. We now have more than 1,800 vets have registered their interest to become a VetGDP advisor. Many have started the e-learning already. They're located in every area of the UK, and on average they have around 15 years of experience in practice, but this is variable across the board. And the e-learning that is in place will really prepare them for the role that they're going to do in supporting you in your role. What kind of support can you expect from your VetGDP advisor? So they'll be the #1 person for you to go to. They'll monitor your progress through the programme, as well as give you one-to-one support on a regular basis. This doesn't mean that other members of the team can't do this as well, but your advisor will be the primary person that you go to. They will give you a range of support, different types of support across all the activities in your role. And it's your responsibility initially to identify the areas that you feel you need most support in. So you know which areas you're confident in and which areas you think you'd benefit from support. And some examples of the types of support you should be requesting: it might be general advice before, during or after a clinical case or consultation, perhaps a really challenging case coming up and it would be useful to chat to your advisor beforehand. A case or activity discussion or debrief afterwards if something happened that didn't quite go to plan and you'd like their advice and guidance on that. You should have regular one-to-one meetings to discuss the reflections on any kind of activity in your role and to get feedback. Hands-on support for complex cases or situation, ask either as eyes in the room or directly hands-on support. And you should have regular monthly meetings to review progress across all EPAs within your role. EPAs, Entrustable Professional Activities, they provide a framework for VetGDP, and essentially they're describing areas of work that are carried out by you in your role. And as I mentioned earlier, the EPA guide is now available to download from our website. And these are the main ones, but if there is an area in your role not covered by these, there's a template and you can easily develop your own and we can support you in that. So EPAs, what they are descriptions of everyday work activities at a high level. They're deliberately high level and flexible so that they can be relevant in different contexts and workplaces. What they aren't is a deconstruction of individual competencies carried out during an activity. In VetGDP, there's no formal assessment process for EPAs specifically. It's about describing the overarching element of your role. To identify the EPAs relevant to your role when you start practice, initially, when you've enrolled on the programme, you'll meet with your VetGDP advisor and the process will begin there. So you'll review the role that you'll be doing and identify relevant EPAs from the bank. We are developing a graduate questionnaire to help you within this. So just to really look at the spread of activities across your role and also look at how confident you're feeling in those. As I mentioned, if your job involves activities not covered by the EPA bank, you can develop your own and we will support you in this. And once agreed, the EPAs that you've identified will become different sections within your VetGDP e-portfolio. The e-portfolio is really in development and will be ready this summer. So these screenshots are just to give you a flavour, and essentially this will be modelled on a similar platform to one CPD, which all vets use, and you'll be able to record your reflections, feedback and progress in each of the EPAs, so all of the activities within your role regularly, and your VetGDP advisor will also be able to put their feedback and reflections in there as well. I'll hand over to Sue now, who's going to talk us through an EPA.
Thank you, Linda. That's great. And as Linda's already said, there's a full list of the EPAs already on the website. So if you've not had the opportunity to look at those, do have a look through them. And they really are just the sort of things that you would deal with on a day-to-day basis in clinical practice. I'm going to talk through this particular EPA, which is about treatment, but many of the others cover things like diagnosis, basic surgical procedures, administration of anaesthesia. So there's nothing difficult or complex about these. And the whole point of these EPAs is they are holistic, if you like, processes where we take together a whole range of your day one competencies to incorporate those into the sort of day-to-day tasks that you're doing in practice. And the aim is really to start with simple cases to gain confidence and to build up through those cases to get your confidence so you're able to cope with much more complex cases as you get your more experience. Now, I'm going to talk about some dermatology cases, but these could be absolutely anything. You don't have to just do a simple and a complex dermatology case. It's all about simple cases and complex cases and being able to cope with those, particularly the uncertainty around things like complex cases. So Linda, if you just give me the next slide, we're going to talk you through an example of a skin case. And so this is what I would describe as a simple case, a straightforward case. And this is a good news case. And a good news case is always one that's going to be much easier to deal with. This is going to be a classical history, a classical presentation. We've got a young puppy that's come from a rescue centre. It's highly paritic. It's got, the owner has lesions as well. You've done your skin scrapings. Linda, if you just click on the next picture for me, we can see from our skin scrapings, we know this dog's got scabies. So this should be fairly straightforward. And I would hope as a new graduate, you would be able to cope with this. You'd be able to have a conversation with the client. The prognosis is excellent. The treatment is readily available. And we can assure the client that this puppy is going to make a complete recovery. It shouldn't just end there, of course, though, because this is a successful case, as well as asking for advice and discussing difficult and complex cases with your advisor, it's really essential too to reflect on successes of simple cases. So this would be something you would reflect on with your advisor after you've actually treated this case. So let's have a look at the next one, Linda, if you move on the slide. And this is a much, much more difficult case. This is a complex case, and this is what I would describe, unfortunately, as a bad news case. This is an elderly dog. This is a dog that has multiple comorbidities. This is a dog, and again, if you click on for me, Linda, where we've done some fine needle aspirates, we've done some biopsies, and this dog has epitheliotropic lymphoma. So the prognosis is not great. There are multiple treatment options that you may consider, and when we're considering things like an optimal outcome with a case like this, then unfortunately euthanasia is something that we do have to consider, and is part of the conversation that we need to potentially have with our owner. And so with this one, it's really important as a new graduate that you show personal leadership and you ask for help. Don't try and cope with these cases if you're an experienced graduate. So ask for help from your clinical advisor. Discuss that case with them before you see it. Have your plan of campaign mapped out for you so you know how the conversation is going to go with the client and how you're going to discuss those treatment options with them. Make sure you're prepared so you're collaborating with the rest of your vet ed team. Make sure your receptionist is aware of the conversations that you're going to have. Make sure you've got a nurse that's available to you to help you if you do have to go for euthanasia. So it's really important that you don't struggle with these, is that you ask for help and that you're working within that supportive environment. So as you get these much more complex cases, whatever they are, you can use those as a learning experience and build on that to become a much more competent and confident surgeon as you move on the way through. So with that, Linda, I'd like to hand it back to you just to finish the presentation.
Okay, thanks, Sue. So just moving on to talk about how you complete and the sign-off process for VetGDP. So in order to be able to do this, you need to demonstrate that you can perform all of the activities within your role without support under each of the EPAs that you've identified. And there is no specific time limit for this. We envisage it will be around a year. However, it could be shorter, it could be longer. And the VetGDP e-portfolio really needs to portray your journey from your first weeks right to when you fully feel that you're experienced, working independently with confidence. And it's when both you and your VetGDP advisor agree that you've reached that stage that you can submit your portfolio to the RCVS for a peer review and sign off. So that agreement will come through your regular discussions with your advisor. So in addition to specific one-to-one sessions on individual cases or activities, we're expecting monthly progress reviews. So your advisor will see your progress regularly, and then you can agree when to submit your portfolio. At this end, once you've submitted your e-portfolio, it will be subject to an independent peer review by a member of the VetGDP panel who's made up of other VetGDP advisors and signed off. This ensures your advisor doesn't have the final responsibility for signing off your e-portfolio, which could conflict with the mentorship aspect of their role. So we have some questions that were submitted in advance.
Yep, shall I, if I read through them, Linda, you can sort of answer those, and then I can chip in my 10 pennyworth as we go through. So the first one that's come in Is it the job of the VetGDP advisor or new graduate to ensure that enough contact is made regularly about development and achievement? So what are your thoughts there?
Good question. It's the responsibility of both, actually. So as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, there's a responsibility on different parties. So as the graduate, you are best placed to lead your professional development and to understand the areas you need most support in. However, it is also the VetGDP advisor's responsibility to make sure that you are progressing as well and provide the support. So that's why we mentioned that the programme is led jointly by the graduate and the advisor. And then the responsible veterinary surgeon in practice is also has a responsibility to allow time for you both to do that.
I think it's fair to say, Linda, there's no such things as stupid questions, there's just questions. It's really important to be able to have the freedom to be able to discuss openly with your advisor your problems and your concerns, isn't it? I think that's really key. Yeah. So what will be the areas we're expected to reflect on, and how much reflection is expected of us?
Okay, so the more reflection, the better, ultimately. And the e-portfolio we're developing makes it really intuitive to record reflections and activities quickly. So this isn't about sitting down writing an essay. We're developing an app as well, similar to One CPD, where you might record your reflections through audio on your phone, or take a photograph, or upload a document. So it should be very, very efficient in recording reflections. The reflections we want are to be housed within each of the EPA sections. So essentially they are the different activities within your job, and it's the success criteria listed within each EPA that we want the variability on. So we want different case complexities, we want different species. So we need as much variation as possible within each area of your role.
Absolutely. And as we said, it's important to discuss both your successes and not your mistakes, your learning opportunities, and particularly that case I talked about with the euthanasia. It's going to be absolutely key that you would discuss and reflect on that after you've potentially undertaken the euthanasia, so you can learn what worked, what didn't work, how you can improve, what went well, so that you use that as a really useful learning experience for the next time you have to do something like that. So how do we choose our EPAs for each role, Linda?
So you'll see we have a bank of EPAs in a document that you can download on our website now. So when you start the programme, the first stage will be to sit down with your VetGDP advisor, discuss the scope of your role, and choose the EPAs that are relevant to that role. The e-portfolio is being developed so that you can do this in the e-portfolio and choose them, and then they're populated automatically within that.
And it's fair to say, Linda, that each EPA can go across different species. So if you're in mixed practice, that treatment could be a dog, a cat, or a horse, couldn't it?
Yeah, the EPAs are deliberately high level. So really just consider them to be the headline, and there'll be multiple different types of activities underneath that. So if the EPA is around surgery, it'd be different species, it'd be different comorbidities, different client cooperation. They're the variables that we're looking for to be underneath each headline EPA.
Absolutely. And so when after starting work should we expect a graduate to sign up?
Really, we're looking for people to sign up and enroll in the programme as soon as possible after starting work, because that's the period that graduates need the most support and how it will be helpful for you. So the answer is as soon as possible. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think those are all the questions that we had. I don't know if there's anything else you felt we should talk about, Linda, before we wrap the session up.
No, just to say that if you have any other questions at all after having seen this, please do contact us directly. You can reach us on vetgdp@rcvs.org.uk, and we'd be very glad to help.
Absolutely. And of course, not just there to help support you as a new graduate, but also for your future employer as well. If they've got problems or concerns, they can contact college. And keep your eye on the website. We will update it as appropriate as we start to have more information available to us. So thank you everybody for your attention, and we'll see you all soon.
Thanks.